Hello and welcome. I don't think you've seen this side of my office here. You usually probably see that other side there. But in any case, so this is going to be a real quick video here because I want to show you very quickly how to build a very simple app using the new SwiftUI, which is a new framework by Apple that allows you to create amazing user interfaces using Swift knowledge, but of course the subset of Swift, which is what we call SwiftUI. It's fairly new, they're still working on it, meaning that it's not the full version yet, it's in beta, but I'm going to show you real quick how to put together a very simple app so that you can start seeing what is possible with SwiftUI. Alright, let's hop on the computer and get this started. In order for us to be able to start looking into building SwiftUI user interfaces or applications, we obviously have to have the right tools. The tool that we need is, of course, Xcode 11, and I hope you're running Mac because I will just say here that's the only way that we'll be able to create iOS applications is with a Mac machine. There are other ways to circumvent this, but I don't endorse those. Of course, you can figure out yourself, but I will assume that you have a Mac and you're ready to go. Now, there's two ways in which we can do this. First of all, we can go ahead and get the newer version of macOS, the operating system, in order for us to be able to get the full spectrum of SwiftUI, which means you're going to get this preview capability as you code your applications using SwiftUI. Okay, but in this case here, because we're just trying to get things going here, I decided to just use Xcode 11, the newest version, which contains the SwiftUI, and install on my Mac machine, which actually my Mac machine is running. Let's go to my About Mac here. It's just running 10.14.4. There is the 10.14.5 that I could go and grab and of course update, but this is what I'm running here, right? So it's Mojave or Mojave. I don't know how to say it. That is what I'm running, okay? Like I said, in order for you to get the full spectrum of SwiftUI, you will have to download, of course, the macOS newest version, which is Catalina, and it's in beta, so I would be very careful because you may end up losing stuff, okay? So anything that's in beta, meaning they're still working on, you have to be a little bit careful. But in our case here, if you wish to do so, go ahead and download Catalina macOS operating system on your machine. It may take a little while, and then you will have all of the full features that I've discussed here. Okay, so anyway, so if you go to developer.apple.com Xcode, this is what you see. You will have to have Xcode 11 in order for you to take advantage of SwiftUI. Okay, so if you come down here, it says Swift Better Apps, Less Code, and so forth, you can click Learn More. It gives you all of this spiel, if you will, about how to get started and all about what SwiftUI is, this revolutionary framework that Apple just created. Okay, we'll go through all of this. Okay, so how do we go ahead and get our Xcode 11 and of course anything else that we would want to install on our machine in order for us to get started? Well, at the top here, you will see where it says develop. So click on develop, and there you have Xcode, Swift, TestFlight, documentation, and so forth. What we want to do is to go to downloads. Now notice here, because I'm already signed up, my name is right here. It says Paulo Deshon, that is indeed my name. In your case, if you don't have an account, it's very easy to create. Just go ahead and create an account. So go to account, and if you don't have an account, it's going to go ahead and give you the opportunity to open a developer account, that is. Notice also that this says developer.apple.com, right? So this is just for developers. So you will have to log in or create an account to become a developer. Now, to create a developer account itself, I believe it's for free. I've created many years ago. You start paying only if you want to distribute your applications via the App Store. Okay, so in this case here, I'm logged in. My name is there, and there is options for you to download the beta software. Beta again means that they're still working on it. It's not the full release yet. So they're working on the bugs and making sure that everything is fine. But at the same time, it's available for developers to start looking into, to start working with it and get used to it. So that essentially is what beta software means. It's not fully ready yet, but it's ready enough for us developers to start playing around with it. So in this case here, you see we have operating systems. This is one of the downloads that we have here. We also have applications. Now, operating systems, you can see, like I said, you can download the Catalina 10.15 Beta 2, install in your machine, in which case you will have the full Catalina, which means this will install in your machine Catalina beta. Okay, so in this case, like I said, I am not going to do this, but you can do if you wish to do so. But just remember, if you want to do that, you may want to perhaps back up all of your current state of your computer just in case things don't work out and so forth. You can revert back. Okay. At a later time, I may end up downloading this Catalina so we can see the full spectrum. But at this point here, I'm not going to bother doing that. Okay. So what we're interested in here is to get Xcode 11. So you go to Applications, of course, and there it is, Xcode 11 Beta 2. Of course, at the recording of this video, that's what we have here, Xcode 11 Beta. Maybe you'll be watching this later in the future, and this probably is just going to say Xcode 11, not Beta 2 or Beta. Okay? In any case, so here we go. So in your case here, you just click download and let it do its thing. In fact, I said it may take a few minutes. It may take a little while, then a few minutes, depending also on your internet connection. So go ahead and do that. I'm not going to do that because I already have it. So once you do that, it's going to install on your machine, and you double click on these Xcode icon you will see and start working with SwiftUI. Okay, remember, you must have Xcode 11 for you to be able to at least get started with SwiftUI. So once you have installed Xcode 11 Beta 2, in this case here, the reason why you're seeing this is because I had already been working on an application. So what you would want to do, you can't quite see, but at the top you will see where it says Xcode. What you need to do at the top here, you will see this menu that says File. You can't quite see here, but it's at the top here, I promise. Go ahead and click on File. You can say New, and you can say you want a new project. So click like that. And voila, this will happen. So what we want to do here is we want just a single view application. This is the most simple form of application with Xcode. So click on that. It's actually highlighted already, so you don't have to do a lot of work. There is the beauty. And go ahead and say next. Of course, in this case here, you don't have to worry about the team. I already have a team for myself there. You don't have to worry about that. What we're going to do here is give it a name. I'm going to just go ahead and say random act, something like that. This is going to be the name of our application. We can name whatever we want, but random act is appropriate for what we're going to be doing. You will see the organization name here. You may have something there. Doesn't really matter. You can put whatever you want. Of course, we have this organization identifier. So what is this really? It's just a way in which each application, each project that we create can be identified in the App Store later. Okay, so the names have to be important because this identifier is connected to your application forever. Really. Okay. And of course, that will translate into a bundle identifier. A bundle essentially is once you have the application, the project, you want to bundle it up as an app to then put it in the App Store or so forth. So people can actually download on their phones. Okay. So you notice as we write things here, you notice that something's happening. So it's appending the name to our bundle identifier. So you can put whatever you want, and it's always customary to add the reverse domain name here. So you can say com.build apps with Paolo like that, my random app as such, and it creates a very nice bundle identifier that will only be for your application. Most importantly here, we want to make sure that we are using Swift, of course, and of course use SwiftUI. So if this is not selected, you must select it. That's very important. Otherwise, it will defeat the point here. So I'm going to say next. It's going to find a place where you want to put this particular project. I've selected a place in my hard drive called Project iOS. You can create your own. Doesn't matter where you're putting it, as long as you know where it is. I'm going to go ahead and say create. And in a few seconds here, I should have, wow, that was very fast. As you can see, we have now our new project. So our beautiful project here, it took us right away to this, what we call the content view.swift. Very cool. But most importantly here is that we have code that was created for ourselves. Now I have to reiterate this because it's something perhaps that you may be a little bit confused at first. Now I have mentioned earlier that if we want the full breadth of what SwiftUI can do, which one of the main thing is the fact that you would have here a preview, meaning that you'd be changing your code and right away you will see the changes, right? Now, we're not going to have that in this case because I did not install the Catalina Beta macOS operating system. Okay, if you did install that, you would see it right away to the right here. Okay, but no problem at all, because like I said, we're just trying to get things going here. So what you can do right away actually is go ahead and click this button here, run. If you go ahead and run this, you'll see that then your iOS simulator will show up. It's there. You can see our very nice simulator is there. Now, if you don't have all of the packages from Xcode, which you should have when you installed it, everything, it will tell you exactly what to do. That's the beauty about Xcode, right? It will tell you, for instance, you have to install the tool. So just click the button and it will go ahead and install all of the components, tools, and everything, which will lead you to actually have a simulator as such. But right out of the box, you should have access to a simulator just like this. And you can see there is this hello world. What's new, folks? Hello World is the most basic mandatory program that you will ever write in any language. It just shows us that things are working, everything was installed correctly, which is exactly what we always want and strive to do and have. Okay, so hello world, you can imagine, you can infer that this hello world here is coming from our text here that we have, this little view text that we have to the left here, right? Text, we have hello world. Let me go ahead and toggle this, close that one down. Also, I'm going to close that pan to the left down so we have more space. If I wish, I can close also this. So we only have code at this point. So you can see here we have this content view is a struct. You don't worry too much about it. Just know that everything or anything that we put inside here should actually show here once we run. Okay, let's see. If I say hello Africa, if I save, I say command run, or I can just go ahead and click this button there. You notice it says hello Africa. Okay, again, I'm going to repeat myself, please forgive me. If we had all of the infrastructure, meaning macOS Catalina, then we wouldn't have to run constantly because all of those changes would actually appear here, which is quite nice. So we have our text here, which is inside of this body here, right? Which is a type of view, if you will. And then it spits out this hello Africa in our emulator. So everything inside of our body here, whatever we put here, is going to be returned and shown inside of the screen. Now, the cool thing about this whole realm of SwiftUI is that we can actually create user interface declaratively, meaning we can actually declare write code to create user interface, to create elements of our user interface. Right? Now, the cool thing also is that we can create some sort of structure to structure our user interface. One of the structures that allows us to start declaring, putting together our user interface is a stack. What is a stack? Well, a stack is just a view that allows us to put other views inside of it, right? So there is VStack. V stands for vertical stack, meaning anything that goes inside of it is going to be as part of a stack that is aligned vertically. Now, if you save this and give a run again, you see that nothing really has changed in that you don't see any changes there. However, if you notice something, if I put another text here, that would say, hey there, something like this, and run, you should notice that it is showing vertically. If I change this to H, and run, it's a horizontal stack. You'll see it's going to be side by side because now everything is aligned horizontally. Okay, very good. So I'm going to go Command Z here to put everything back there. So what we're trying to do here is to create a button that when clicked, the button will actually randomly select a few words, or in this case, just going to be a list or an array or a collection of variables that will contain names of companies. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing here. So this means that we need a button instead of a text, right? Well, how do we create a button? Simply, we just start typing button. You can see there is indeed a button there. So if you click enter and you open parentheses, you notice that it helps us to say, okay, you want a button, so these are the things that you need to create a button. So I'm going to say enter. So the first thing I need to pass an action here. I'm just going to pass parentheses here, which is a closure, okay? And then for the label, I'm going to just go ahead and create outside like that. So what this means is the following. Whatever is done to this button, whatever we do to this button, the action is going to be inside here. And then whatever is out here, we can put a text. This is the text that will show to our button. So if I say here, surprise me, like that. Now, if I save and run, you see we have the button that says surprise me. Now, it's kind of hard to see that this is indeed a button, but we can also infer that it is indeed a button, a very generic iOS button, because the color has changed. And if you look closely, if you tap, you can see that it fades in and out. Okay, so that tells us that it is indeed a button. But we want to make sure that this button actually looks more like a button. So we can actually change the way it looks. That's the beauty of SwiftUI, because it allows us to declare our user interface on the whim, right? So in this case here we have a button, and we know that inside of the button, the text, of course, is what shows. As you can see here, we can go ahead and make this button a little bit better. Well, what I'm going to do actually, because remember, anything inside here, we can wrap anything inside of a stack, if you will. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say vStack, because it's always a good idea to wrap things around stacks and so forth, because then we have more flexibility, if you will. So now I have our vStack here, which is wrapping our text, which is essentially the text is going to be in our button, as we saw. Okay? Very good. So what I'm going to do before I even work on our vStack here, I'm going to change a few things inside of our button, namely the text. The first thing I can do, I can actually say that font, like this, I can change the font of our text in our button here. If I open, like that, and I can pass in some sort of a modifier, like a function that I can call to invoke the font that I want. Okay, so I can say dot, and there's so many fonts that I can use at this point here. There's headline, there's large title, subhead. I'm going to go ahead and use, let's see, I'm going to use the large title. Save and run. You will notice something will change. Look how big this button is. All right? I can go ahead and let's just say I want it to be dot headline. Okay, so it's not as large as the previous one. There we go. It's kind of smaller, but that looks good. Very good. So we have that now. And the next thing I can do here, I can continue declaratively add things to my button. In this case, I'm going inside of the text, right? I can say, for instance, dot color to be dot red, like that. So if I save this, you will see what's going to happen. Now the text is red. Our button is red. Okay, so this is our possibility. Okay, let's continue here. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go outside of our text here, because now I want to make this whole button beautiful. I'm going to go outside of our text, and this is now going to be our vStack. Okay, let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call frame. So there is a method called frame. What the frame does, it allows us to create a frame around the vStack. Okay, so we need to pass a width. So width, I'm going to say I want this to be about 200 and a height of about 60. Save and run. Let's see what's going to happen. You don't see anything, right? The reason why you don't see anything, there is a frame there, is because we haven't changed the color. So the color is still white. That's why you don't see anything, because there's white on white. So to change that, I can continue. Remember, I am outside of our text. This is what it's enclosing our text, a vStack. I'm going to go ahead and say background. Notice also that our IntelliSense here is not showing. It's a little buggy here, but it's okay. I'm going to say color.blue. The moment you do that, command run, or you can always click this button there. Look at that. Now we can see the contour of our button, our frame that we specify there. And you can see this color is not very flattering because it's just not a good contrast. So I'm going to change this to white. You see how easy everything is now to create things, right? So now we have our button. And notice even the actual click motion resembles a button. If I want to make the height perhaps a little bit bigger, let's make it as 200. We can do that. Give a quick run. And you can see, there we go. But we're not done yet. We can do all sort of things. So all this, I just want to show you the user interface, how easy it is to get things actually get prettier, more sophisticated. So we can even go further and make this, maybe create these round corners here, put some sort of radius in our round corner. So it's kind of rounder as opposed to be sharp like that. So what we're going to do, we're going to go outside now of our button here. So you see, as you click these braces, it tells you exactly where you are. So right about there, I'm going to say dot corner radius, And I'm going to pass something inside of our corner radius. I want it to be about 10 of radius. And on top of that, I'm going to pass the shadow modifier here because I want to have a nice shadow. You can pass a few things here, but all I'm really looking for really is the radius of our shadow. Okay, so in this case here, the radius is going to be about 5, and I'm going to delete everything else because we don't need to worry about that. So let's save and give it a run. Let's see what's going to happen. Look at that. And just like that, from having sharp edges, not very inspiring user interface, now our button looks way better. It has the corners and the shadows. Let's see if I make this a little bit more, 15, a little bit exaggerated there, but that's not a problem at all. Look at that. Very nice. Okay, the shadow is a little bit more dense. And just like that, we have a very nice button, right? So I'm going to go ahead and actually make this 300 because I like bigger buttons. I think it's better for us to be able to see as well. Look at that. So everything is actually looking much, much better. Okay. So the idea here is that when we click this button, we want to be able to change the contents of this surprise me text, which means this text here. So how do we get that done? So we're going to be getting that done in the next video. Right, so at this point, I hope you are seeing how fun and how quickly we can put together a very simple user interface nonetheless, but you can see the power here, right? So it's declarative, so meaning you actually typing the user interface as opposed to using storyboards and all that other stuff that iOS developers had to use. So this framework is very promising. I'm really enjoying it. It's really great. So far we're able to create a very basic user interface. So we have the button and we created the corners, we have the shadows and the text and all this stuff, the fonts for the text and everything like that. Okay, so everything is looking great. So next what we're going to do is we're going to attach an event to the button so that when they click, users in this case click the button, something happens, because that is indeed what applications do. So it's something that happens in response to a tap or a click. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Stay tuned. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, because I have superpowers, all of a sudden you may notice that I have this variable here that contains an array containing all of these names here, right? So we have Apple, Uber. So these are essentially the big tech companies that have been around, some of them for a long time, others for just a few years here and there, okay? So I just put it all together here, so you didn't have to watch me write them all like that. So this is indeed an array because we have everything inside of a square bracket and we have everything is delimited by a comma. Okay, so it's a structure that allows us to put a lot of data inside that we can use later. So like I said, the idea is to click and we're going to go and fetch one of these elements in this array and show in here. But to make things a little bit more exciting, we decided that it will indeed be something random. So instead of going through the whole array at once, we're going to go and hope to get random name each time we press the button. So at this point, you know that the action, this is the property action, which we will return this closure here, right? So essentially, this is where we're going to add what's going to happen when we click the button. So what I'm going to do is at the top, I'm going to create another holder variable. So I'm going to call this variable var name, and it's going to just be an empty string. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and say surprise me like that. Okay, so it's an empty string that we're going to use to show. So what I can do now is instead of writing surprise me, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that and just call the name as such. Okay, let's go ahead and save this and run, see what's going to happen. So we didn't do much really here, and says surprise me. Now you notice that this surprise me, it's coming from this variable at the top that we created. Very cool. Nothing really out of this world. But the idea here is bigger, right? As we said before. So how do we then get each one of these items here and show them here? Now we could come down here and say, because we know it's an array, I can say names like this. And I'm going to go ahead and access, for instance, 0 like that. Okay, that would work. I'm going to run this real quick. And we should see Apple because the first item in our array is indeed Apple. But that doesn't serve us anything because we want things to be random. How do we get this to work? Well, the reason why I have this name variable there is because I want to use that as a holder, which will be changing as we click the button. In fact, I'm going to change this to something better. I'm going to call this text name, something like that. Okay, much better. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to put back what we had before, surprise me. It's an array. It's a string, that is. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a few things here. So inside of our action here, this is where everything happens. Let's go ahead and run this one more again. So the idea here again is to, when we click here, we want to be able to get one of these items here, but it has to be randomly. Okay, so all of that has to happen inside of the action, because when the action happens, when the button's clicked, then we do what we need to do. So in order for us to get a random element from an array, there's different ways to do so. But the way that I'm going to do here, I'm going to leverage Swift 5.1, I believe, which is one of the latest version of Swift, which allows us to actually use a method called a random element. It just goes ahead and gets a random element from an array. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to say names, okay, dot random element, look at that, and voila. So I can access that. But the moment you do that, you notice we have a problem. It says reference to property names in closure requires explicit self. What this means, really, nutshell, means, well, we have names here, but we're inside of a closure. So it's another entity inside of this struct here. Names is indeed outside of this closure here. So the scope, meaning it's not being seen inside here. It can't, because it's out of scope. It can't be accessed inside of a closure, because we declared it outside of this closure. Just put a self dot and go and get it, just like that. And you can see now everything is highlighted, beautiful colors, and life is good. What is this self? This self just means go outside to the main struct, which is this content view here, and go get the names. That is all we're saying here. Okay? So at this point here, we are going to get names, which is our names array here, and we're going to randomly get one of these guys here. Now, we know these are texts, which means we can actually put inside of our text name, which is this variable here. You see? So I can just go ahead here and say something like text name is equal to that. Now, you notice I'm going to have the same problem here, because this text name is indeed outside of the scope as well, which says we need to put a self that, something like that. So in this case, self that text name is going to be equal to self random and get one element. Now we have another problem. This is what I want to get at. The problem here is saying cannot assign to property self is immutable. What is this? Well, in a nutshell, when you create a struct is just a structure, no pun intended, that creates an entity that can never be changed. So in general, in Swift, pretty much everything such as strings and characters, everything, they all are structs, meaning they are not mutable. They're not objects per se if you're coming from object-oriented programming language, right? So here it's saying, well, we get what you're trying to do, but the text is a property of a struct, which means these cannot be mutable. You cannot change them because you gave them a value. That is the value they're going to have forever. So we have a problem here, but how do we then change? Because the idea is to change a state of certain variables so that we can show. That is the whole idea, isn't it? But how do we do that? Well, the SwiftUI folks understood the need of that, right? So they created what we call wrappers. In this case here, we have a few different kind of wrappers, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here so that you don't get all confused. The idea here is to say, okay, if there's a variable that needs to be attached to this view, meaning that it also has to be updated and changed, we need to attach something to it so that the SwiftUI framework knows that, that variable, even though it's part of a struct, which is a structure that doesn't allow for us to mutate or to change something. In this case here, we're going to make a copy, and SwiftUI are going to make it so that it's actually you can change that variable. Does that make sense? So how do we do that? Well, SwiftUI says, well, if you append at state to any variable as such, then you're good to go, because that will say that, okay, indeed, that variable can change anytime, and it's totally fine. There's no problem. It won't breach anything. Okay? So we're going to have another issue here, which says value optionals type string must be unwrapped to value type. So all it's doing here is that we may end up getting something weird, and we need to unwrap it to make sure that something doesn't go wrong. what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go and click that to fix it. So this now is going to say, well, if something goes wrong here, we need to have a default value, which is going to be a string. So we can just go ahead and put a default value of string, just say apples, like that. Just say if something goes wrong, we don't get the actual value here, just go ahead and put a string there and call it good. Okay. And just like that, we have solved our problem. Notice the main issue here was that we have to make this mutable, right? So we put at state, we're just saying SwiftUI, whenever you look at this text name, understand that we want to change it, we want to update it, and it's okay, even though, like I said, it's inside of a struct, and anything inside of this struct cannot be mutable, cannot be changed. So we hand off this responsibility to the actual SwiftUI, not just SwiftUI framework to deal with everything. So now this text here will always be looking for changes. So if it changes, then it will reload the user interface and show the change. So that means then I can come down here and just pass our text name like that. Does that make sense? Because remember, this text name here we said is indeed a state, which means if we click and we change the text name to whatever we're getting, which should be a random item from our array, then we're going to show that inside of our button. Let's go ahead and give it a look. Let's run this and see what's going to happen. If all goes well, of course, everything should work. Okay, surprise me. That is the default text. Click Uber. Click Google. That's pretty random. Google again. The random generator is very strange. Sometimes gets the same numbers, so that's why sometimes you get the same item. That's fine. IBM, and it is indeed working. Look at that. Very good. Very, very nice. Now, this application is very simple in the sense that you were able to see the user interface, how easy it is with SwiftUI to create a very simple user interface. Nothing out of this world, but you can see the possibilities as we saw in a previous video. But also on top of that, I introduced you a very important concept, which is that of the state, the wrapper state that allows us to say, okay, if you want to keep track or we want to be able to update a property inside of indeed a view or struct view, which are all immutable, can never be changed, we attach a state wrapper, as you see like that, and then the SwiftUI will know exactly what to do with it. We'll say, okay, that's fine. That means that variable can't be updated, can be changed. So anytime we click, it changes. We can actually go ahead and redraw the entire view and give the new updated value. And you notice we had to do that because it wouldn't let us otherwise to use the text name the way we want like this without wrapping it into a state type. Now that we're able to see how to build a very simplistic application using SwiftUI, I hope you're inspired to start looking into it and learn more about Swift. So I'm going to be creating a few videos here and there, exploring more, showing you more stuff about SwiftUI and Swift as well, understanding the language and so forth. So if you're new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. My name is Paulo. My goal is to create amazing developers who are not only savvy coding applications and programming, but also teaching you the soft skills that you need to become a well-rounded developer. So that is my goal, that is my mission, and I thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, go ahead and smash that thumbs up and let me know what you think, leave comments and so forth, and I'll see you next time.